Would a government risk shaking foreign investor confidence overnight just to take back a single gold mine?
Niger. Niger nationalizes the nation's only industrial gold mine.
Yes, Niger has just seized its only industrial gold mine from an Australian company. No warning, no negotiations, just gone. A simple question here is, why? Let's find out. The evening broadcast on Niger state television was already running late when the screen abruptly cut to a government emblem and the solemn voice of the announcer. Viewers were expecting routine updates on weather and agricultural markets. Instead, they were met with a single, uncompromising declaration. Niger's government had taken complete control of the Société des Mines du Liptako, the country's sole industrial gold mine. The statement was read slowly, word by word, each carrying the weight of a political earthquake. Given serious breaches, to save this highly strategic company, the state of Niger has decided to nationalize SML, the announcer read, quoting directly from an order signed earlier that day by President General Abdourahmane Tiani. It was not an announcement wrapped in diplomatic niceties. There were no gestures toward renegotiation, no language about joint management, and no attempt to soften the blow to the mine's Australian operator, McKinnell Resources Limited. The decision had been made, the transfer was immediate, and the ownership was now entirely in Nigerian hands. What stunned observers was not just the action itself, but its speed. The nationalization was presented as a fait accompli, a completed act rather than a future intention. There was no mention of an extended legal process, no reference to arbitration, and no warning period. This suggested that the move had been in planning for some time, kept deliberately quiet until the state was ready to act in a single stroke. In the immediate hours following the announcement, the air in Niamey was thick with speculation. International investors scrambled for updates, foreign correspondents rushed to confirm details with the Ministry of Mines, and McKinnell Resources headquarters in Australia reportedly received the same news through media broadcasts as the rest of the world. Within mining circles, the shock was compounded by the fact that Niger's gold sector is relatively small compared to its uranium and oil industries, yet the government had chosen this particular project for such a high-profile intervention. The timing also raised eyebrows. The decision came just 2 months after Niger nationalized the local branch of French uranium giant Orano, an event that had already strained relations with Western capitals. To make another major resource seizure so soon suggested not coincidence but a deliberate strategy, one that would inevitably set Niger on a collision course with established mining powers. Within the country, the framing was unambiguous. This was a matter of national sovereignty. The official broadcast described SML as a highly strategic company, whose survival was essential to the appropriation of our natural resources by the Nigerian people. The message was crafted for a domestic audience as much as for the international stage, signaling to citizens that the state was not afraid to confront foreign corporate power in the name of protecting national wealth. For now, there are few visible signs of disruption at the mine site itself, located along the banks of the river Niger in the country's southwest. Security presence has reportedly increased, but production crews remain on site, with the government assuring that operations will continue under state management. There is no official word on whether foreign technical staff will remain or if the workforce will be entirely Nigerian in the coming weeks. Yet the unanswered questions linger. Why take such a decisive action now, in the middle of the year, rather than quietly wait for contract expiry or a negotiated buyout? Was there a trigger event that forced the government's hand, or had the decision been set in motion long before the public knew? To understand why the government acted so decisively, we have to look at what SML represents beyond the gold it produces. For Niger, this mine is not simply an industrial site. It is a cornerstone of its ambitions to move from a raw resource exporter to a country capable of building value within its borders. The Société des Mines du Liptako sits in a geologically rich zone, part of the West African gold belt that stretches from Ghana in the south to Senegal in the west. This belt has produced some of the continent's most lucrative deposits, and Niger's portion, though less developed, holds the potential to rival its neighbors in both scale and profitability. What makes SML unique is that it is the only operational industrial gold mine in the country, meaning it serves as both a production hub and a model for what Niger's gold sector could become. It's not just about output in kilograms. The mine plays a crucial role in building mining infrastructure, roads, energy connections, and processing facilities, which are essential for future projects. Without such infrastructure, other gold-rich regions in Niger remain largely inaccessible for large-scale operations. In effect, SML is the logistical anchor for expanding the industry as a whole. Then there's the question of revenue structure. In an economy heavily dependent on agriculture and uranium exports, gold offers a diversification path that could reduce vulnerability to market swings in other commodities. For years, Niger's economic planners have eyed gold as a potential stabilizer, capable of generating hard currency reserves and cushioning against external shocks. In this context, losing control over the mine, or allowing its output to stagnate, would be more than a missed opportunity. It would be a direct blow to economic strategy. The location of SML also carries strategic significance. Sitting on the banks of the river Niger, it lies within reach of key transport routes that connect the interior to trade corridors in West Africa. That proximity to a navigable waterway and regional roads allows for relatively efficient movement of goods and equipment, a factor that reduces operating costs and makes the site attractive for scaling up production. Few other mineral projects in the country enjoy such logistical advantages. There's also the symbolic weight of SML. It was one of the first industrial mining ventures in Niger to attract significant foreign investment after decades of limited activity in the gold sector. For policymakers, its success was meant to prove that Niger could host world-class mining projects and draw in international capital. That symbolism cuts both ways. If the mine thrives, it strengthens the government's narrative of building a modern economy. If it fails, it risks being cited as proof that Niger's mining environment is too unstable to attract serious investors. Furthermore, the mine's role in employment and skills transfer cannot be overstated. It employs hundreds of workers directly and supports thousands more indirectly through supply contracts, services, and local commerce. In a country where job creation is a constant political priority, the health of a project like SML is tightly linked to public perception of the government's competence. This is why any threat to the mine's viability is not just an economic problem but also a political one. The stakes, therefore, extend far beyond a single production site. SML is an economic pillar, an infrastructure catalyst, a revenue generator, and a political symbol. Allowing it to fall into decline would weaken all of these roles at once. Still, knowing how important this mine is to Niger only sharpens the question. If it was so critical, how did it end up in a position that the government describes as alarming? Let's pause for a second to say big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. When a government steps in to seize a major industrial asset, it is rarely a first resort. By the time the nationalization order for the SML was signed, Niger's leadership had already concluded that the project had been driven to the edge of collapse. What pushed them to that point was a series of mounting failures, financial, operational, and managerial, that, taken together, convinced officials there was no credible path to recovery under the existing operator. The first red flag was the disappearance of promised investment. When McKinnell Resources Limited assumed control of the mine in 2019, one of its commitments was a $10 million capital injection. This was not a symbolic pledge. The funds were meant to finance new processing equipment, expand capacity, and improve extraction efficiency. But according to the government, those upgrades never materialized. Instead, critical machinery aged without replacement, and sections of the operation were forced to make do with equipment already nearing the end of its service life. In the mining industry, where precision and reliability directly determine output, such neglect is not merely a cost-saving measure. It is a recipe for decline. Parallel to the stalled investment came mounting financial obligations. Tax payments reportedly fell behind schedule, creating friction with the Treasury and undermining the state's confidence in McKinnell's fiscal reliability. At the same time, wage arrears began to pile up, eroding trust among the workforce. In mining towns, where the company payroll often circulates through the entire local economy, these delays ripple outward. Small businesses struggle, suppliers go unpaid, and social tensions rise. Operational instability followed. Production stoppages became more frequent, sometimes linked to equipment breakdowns, other times to disputes over unpaid wages. Each halt meant lost revenue, missed delivery schedules, and further strain on relationships with buyers and contractors. For a mine that serves as the country's only industrial gold producer, even short interruptions carry disproportionate economic consequences. Another point of contention was staffing policy. The government contends that layoffs were implemented without a coherent restructuring plan, reducing the mine's capacity to operate at optimal levels while also worsening unemployment in the surrounding area. In skilled industries like mining, layoffs are not easily reversible. Once experienced workers leave, replacing them requires months of training and often higher costs. Debt accumulation compounded the crisis. With revenue flows disrupted and investment withheld, McKinnell reportedly resorted to borrowing to maintain basic operations. Over time, this created what officials describe as significant increased debt, further reducing the company's flexibility to address operational challenges. This debt burden also raised doubts about whether McKinnell could ever commit the resources needed to stabilize and grow the mine. While each of these issues might have been survivable in isolation, together they formed a pattern that alarmed the Nigerian state. A mine with national-level strategic importance was being run, in the government's view, on a foundation that was both financially fragile and operationally unsound. Inside government circles, the conclusion began to crystallize. If the situation was allowed to persist, Niger risked not just reduced output, but the eventual loss of the mine as a functioning industrial asset. Waiting for contract renegotiations or relying on arbitration would take months, if not years. The state believed it could not afford to lose. The decision to act was thus framed not as a dispute over corporate governance, but as an intervention to prevent irreversible damage to a national resource. It was a judgment call that carried risks, but in the eyes of the leadership, the alternative, continued decline under McKinnell, was worse. Yet the events at SML did not unfold in isolation. In recent years, similar conflicts between foreign mining operators and host governments have erupted across the Sahel. The pattern raises a larger question. Is this just a Nigerian issue, or part of a broader shift in how the region handles its mineral wealth? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video, and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. What happened in Niger with the nationalization of the SML is not an isolated event. Across the Sahel, governments are rewriting the rules of resource ownership, and they are doing so with a speed and decisiveness that has startled long-standing foreign operators. The takeover of SML fits into a wider, deliberate shift, one where the states of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso are abandoning the old model of resource exploitation, in which external companies held the dominant position and reaped the lion's share of profits. Over the past 3 years, these countries have been redefining what it means to control their mineral wealth. Mali has restructured its mining code to give the state a larger stake in gold projects. Burkina Faso has introduced new regulations that allow the government to intervene in mining operations deemed vital to national interest. Niger's recent actions, first the takeover of the uranium operations run by France's Orano in June 2025, and now the seizure of SML, show it is willing to apply those principles in practice, not just on paper. The driving force behind this regional wave of nationalizations is a combination of political will and economic necessity. Decades of foreign-led extraction have left these countries with impressive export figures but limited domestic benefits. Infrastructure around mine sites often exists solely to serve extraction, not to integrate with national development plans. Local communities have seen little in the way of sustained investment, and governments have found themselves dependent on royalties and taxes that fluctuate with global commodity prices. By taking a more assertive role, Sahelian governments aim to reverse that pattern. The stated goal is not only to increase state revenue from mining, but also to control the pace and direction of resource development. For leaders like Niger's General Tiani, this control is framed as a matter of sovereignty. the idea that the nation's strategic minerals must serve the needs of its people before they serve the balance sheets of foreign shareholders. Another factor shaping this trend is the evolving geopolitical landscape. The withdrawal or reduction of Western military and economic engagement in the Sahel, combined with the entry of new partners such as Russia, China, and Turkey, has altered the leverage these governments hold. Foreign investment is no longer limited to a small pool of Western companies. There is now competition among state-backed and private operators from multiple regions. This diversification of potential partners gives Sahelian governments more room to negotiate terms that favor national priorities. The political symbolism of these moves cannot be understated. Nationalization is presented domestically as a statement of independence, proof that the government is willing to confront powerful foreign interests when they are perceived to be acting against the country's best interests. In regions where public sentiment has long been skeptical of foreign control over resources, such actions can bolster a government's legitimacy and support base. However, the strategy carries risks. Taking over industrial-scale mining projects demands technical expertise, capital investment, and access to global markets. Without these, production can stagnate or decline, undermining the very economic benefits the nationalization was meant to secure. This is why regional observers are watching closely to see whether these governments can match political boldness with operational success. In this context, Niger's seizure of SML is more than a dispute with one company. It is a signal to the world that the Sahel's resource governance model is being rewritten. Whether this new model can deliver on its promises will depend on what happens next, when the political act of taking control must give way to the practical realities of running and expanding a complex mining operation. That brings us to the final stage of the story. Now that Niger has SML under state control, how will it ensure the mine thrives and supports the country's broader economic ambitions? With the SML now firmly in state hands, the challenge for Niger has shifted from the political to the practical. The government has already demonstrated its willingness to take decisive action, but keeping the mine productive and making it more profitable will require a different skill set altogether. The decisions made in the next year will determine whether the nationalization becomes a success story or a cautionary tale. The first task will be stabilizing operations. Transitions of this nature are inherently disruptive, and even if the government has kept crews in place, shifts in management can unsettle production schedules. Officials will need to reassure both workers and suppliers that the mine will run without interruption, pay will be delivered on time, and contracts will be honored or restructured transparently. This stability is not just about keeping the gold flowing. It is also a message to the market that Niger can execute nationalizations without losing operational momentum. A second priority is securing the technical expertise required for large-scale mining. Gold extraction is capital-intensive and demands specialized skills, from geologists and engineers to metallurgists and safety inspectors. While the government may have some domestic capacity, building a fully localized technical workforce will take years. In the interim, Niger will likely need to bring in external contractors or partner with companies willing to operate under new, sovereignty-focused terms. This is where the geopolitical shifts discussed earlier come into play. Alternative partners from regions such as Asia or the Middle East could be brought in under agreements that ensure majority state control and technology transfer. Financing will be another critical test. Modern mining operations require continuous investment to maintain efficiency and expand reserves. Without the foreign capital that previously flowed from Mackinac Resources, the state will need to identify new funding channels. This could include sovereign-backed loans, joint ventures with state-owned enterprises from allied nations, or tapping into regional development banks. The key will be structuring these arrangements in a way that avoids the kind of dependency Niger has sought to break. Beyond the immediate operational issues lies the question of value addition. At present, most gold produced in Niger is exported in raw form, with the refining and much of the profit taking place abroad. Establishing in-country refining capacity would keep more of the value chain inside Niger, creating jobs and boosting revenues. Such a move would also reduce reliance on foreign buyers, who often dictate terms based on access to processing facilities. However, this will require significant investment in infrastructure and regulatory frameworks to support a domestic refining industry. There is also the opportunity to integrate SML into a broader national mining strategy. By using the mine as a training ground for engineers, technicians, and managers, Niger could build a pipeline of skilled professionals to staff future projects. This approach would turn the mine into more than just a revenue source. It would become a hub for industrial knowledge that could be applied across multiple sectors. Finally, the government will need to manage international perception. While domestic audiences may see the takeover as a victory for sovereignty, some foreign investors will interpret it as a warning sign. Striking a balance between asserting control and maintaining a reputation as a reliable investment destination will be difficult but essential. One approach could be to clearly articulate a new mining policy that lays out the conditions under which foreign companies can operate, conditions that prioritize national benefit while offering operational clarity. In the end, the nationalization of SML will be judged less by the act of taking control and more by what follows. If Niger can keep the mine running smoothly, expand its output, and capture more value within its borders, it will set a precedent for resource nationalism that other African nations may follow. If not, it risks validating the criticism that state takeovers lead to inefficiency and lost revenue. The spotlight is now fixed on Niamey. The political gamble has been made. The next chapter will show whether Niger can turn that gamble into lasting economic strength. Why would Niger seize a gold mine without warning? What made this single site worth the risk? Let us know in the comment section, what does it reveal about Africa's new power game? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.